Matt.
And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta Independence, broadcasting live Monday through Friday, starting at 5 p.m. And hopefully we end by 7. Today, I think The Fringe has a big show. So as soon as you're done watching us, if you want more Alberta Independence news, it's a great content creator to go to. Let's get into it.
Hello to everybody. First of all, thank you so much for being here today with us. Please do subscribe because it really does help us out. And if you don't know the format of the show, we have a few segments we go through. At the end of each segment, we actually read all your comments. We do prioritize super chats, but we read them all anyway. And I'll say hello to Cole. How are you? And is asking anyone watching the NASA rocket launch. We were kind of watching it before.
Well, no, I wasn't watching it until I got your comment. Yeah. And then I I looked at it. I researched some of the history. This is the first time they're sending humans in a rocket up to past lower Earth orbit since 1972. I know Trump wants to go to the moon, but I mean, NASA just... It seems like SpaceX has really taken over everything. That being said, there's a lot of questions if they even had enough fuel the first time to go to the moon. I know
you like conspiracy theories.
We disagree on that, but
reality-minded. It's Napper. Thank you for commenting, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully we do talk a lot today. And Cole says, I was planning on supporting today. Thank you so much. And asks which has a better split, Rumble or YouTube. Thank you so much for wanting to support, number one. And I think for us, YouTube, funnily enough, does have a better split in the end. So if you do want to support, thank you so much. And
yeah, and we do read all comments, but if somebody does send a super chat, we stop the show and read it as soon as we see it. Yes. That being said, there's a big show. I switched up the arrangement because I watched something today that kind of pissed me off at first, but it's an issue I've been kind of preaching on the show a lot, and that's about national conservatives coming over to support the independence movement. Why don't we play the clip that I had?
Oh, we're starting now. Sorry, hold on. From James Halliday, hello, and says, Alberta strong and free, let's go Alberta. And yes, basically that it will be the whole show.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the show's going to be framed around, because the 12th of next month is coming up, where I think Carney's going to get a majority government. He's even planning on it at this point. He's planning to take a vacation after that election. If he does get that majority, it's time for conservative Canadians to wake the hell up. 3 years is a pipe dream for Pierre Poilievre. At that point, it's time to get behind Alberta independence.
So this was the video you were talking about from Slang in the Biscuit podcast, saying how to prepare for Canada's collapse.
Yeah, and I think this is where a lot of conservatives are going to be after the 12th. And rather than go to the States or go to somewhere else, go to Alberta. You really do have a chance to make a change. And what he says at the beginning here is absolutely ridiculous. I completely disagree with it. Alberta independence is giving hope to a lot of Canadians in other provinces as well as Alberta.
And other countries, again, us.
Well,
it's giving hope to us too.
One more thing, we had a record number of people leave BC last year, 41,000, primarily for the United States. It was the same across the board in most provinces. Alberta should be the choice if you're going to vote for independence, not the United States as of right now.
Are you ready for it? Are you prepared for Canada's collapse? When the shit hits the fan, do you have a plan? That is what today's video is all about. We cannot change things. We have to accept that whether you are awake or you are not awake, you must surrender to the way that things are, not the way that they should be, the way that you want them to be, or the way that they ought to be.
And
surrender to how it is.
And I completely disagree with that. I would have said a year or 2 years ago, yeah, that was the situation in Canada. You need to maybe plan to leave the country. Right now, Alberta independence, there's real hope for real change here. What he's saying is you have to accept reality. No, you don't. You can vote for independence and we can make a new country, make a new reality.
End of story. The end is coming. Oh, the Prime Minister will save me. Well, guess what? He moved his businesses down to the U.S. too. You think he's going to save her ass? No, sir. Well, Pierre is going to save me. Yeah, Pierre is not going to do anything. Instead of 750,000 immigrants a year, he wants 250,000 immigrants a year, and he wants to give them all permanent residency. Have them stay here for cheap labor. He's going to save you? He just sold your ass out on the Joe Rogan podcast, said nothing about the tyrannical, authoritarian Liberal government for the past 10 years, the censorship. He didn't have the balls to say anything because all he's worried about is a rebrand. And just confirm for you that he's a lifelong politician and does not have the balls to be a real leader. What does a leader do? A leader goes against the grain. A leader says.
And that being said, I think this is going to be conservatives come the 12th of next month. If Mark Carney gets a majority, we need to give them hope and tell them if they do move to Alberta rather than going to the United States can always be that safety net for them. But Alberta has a chance to stand up against this tyrannical government that has existed for 10 years. You don't have to accept things the way they are. We can really make a change. This movement, this is the one vote where you're not just voting for a prime minister, you're not just voting for a little bit of change, you're voting to flip the game board upside down and press reset here.
But I do agree with him, at least, that people do need to wake up. More people need to wake up as to what is actually happening in Canada and stop making excuses. In that bit, I do agree. But the solution is right in front of a lot of people that they just don't want to see, or it seems too difficult.
Well, yeah, and that's not a liberal. That's a pretty hardcore conservative that's saying that. And I'm seeing this across the board. They are really, really starting to lose hope, and rightfully so. I lost hope. I chose to leave Canada. There was no Alberta independence movement that was serious at the time. I wish there was, because Alberta would have been my first choice.
Yes. But then you also had this part of the video.
Yeah, and I mean, he's lost so much hope to go to this degree. This was a little bit too much for me and a little bit ridiculous.
And by the way, the Liberal Party of Canada, I got to preface this every single video. If you want me off the internet, you don't have to Charlie Kirk my ass. You don't have to freeze my bank accounts. Just send me an email. I can be bought and sold. I will be the biggest Liberal Party supporter, and I will sell out like you have never seen a sellout before, because the people in this country that I want to save and that I want to help to fix the country don't want to be saved. So screw it. Money's better in my pocket than somebody else's pocket. But
yeah, and we're going to have a lot of conservatives. We've already seen freaking aisle crossers of everything. They're having that mentality. This is a content creator that's having the same mentality. I watch a lot of his content. Usually he's very good. I just vehemently disagreed with all of his analysis today. A lot of the in-between segments were spot on, but I will say there is hope in Canada, and that is Alberta, and that is to separate and gain your independence and start a new country and found a new constitution.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think the first step is to admit and accept the actual state that the country is in. If you're outside of Alberta, if you're in Alberta, you already kind of know, and you have that exit ramp that you form for yourselves and that you're fighting for. But for everybody else, it's no use just saying, oh, things are hopeless, there's nothing we can do, the system is broken. Right now, there is a solution, and maybe a lot of people just don't want to see it. And I do agree with him as well. He says a lot of Canadians don't seem like they want to be saved. And I did feel that, which is partly why we decided, well, if nobody has any common sense left, at least in Vancouver and British Columbia, let's just go.
But there are tens of thousands of people just like him that have already made an exit plan to the U.S. A lot of them pulled the parachute last year and went last year, but there's tens of thousands more going to go this year. Rather than pull that parachute for the United States, Alberta is the place to go. You can always go to the United States if the independence vote does not work out for some reason. Mm-hmm. So, I know I've said this a lot over the last few weeks, but I think it's something that we need to be pitching conservative Canadians that are independence-minded that would vote for Alberta independence. Move to Alberta rather than the United States if you have that opportunity and if you have the financial means.
Now, should we go to breaking news?
Yeah, let's go right into breaking news if we can.
Sure.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
This is more to do with Carney making dumb decisions as always. From Wealth Moves, quote, $3.8 billion for nature, but $0 for your cost of living crisis.
And yeah, I kind of want to stop you right there. This is not just about Carney. This has a lot to do with Alberta, and we're going to go in depth in a series of articles here, and I think we have a couple more about this. We've been kind of covering what's happening with the UN, the Canadian federal government, and a lot of other pieces on the chessboard to take away private property. It's not just happening in BC. It's going to be a huge land grab. If Alberta does not separate now, this is the plan to start taking Alberta's land and to take private property rights away.
So Mark Carney just fast-tracked the 30 by 30 land lockup. The goal, restricting rural movement and preparing the infrastructure for 15-minute cities. This has been the plan for a while now. Mark Carney's priority is clear. $3.8 billion to seize control of 30% of our land and water. This isn't about nature. It's about control. 30% of Canada's off limits by 2030, 15-minute cities for the remaining 70%, total surveillance of movement, and your carbon footprint. They want you in the city, they want the land for themselves.
Well, and this has been a big plan of the globalists through the UN, and they're trying to engage this in multiple countries around the world. Canada seems to be the tip of the spear for a lot of these land grabs, but they're also trying to tokenize natural resources. That's going to be the next step after they're able to accomplish this. They want to own everything, and so you will own nothing. After this, we're going to have a little bit of analysis on kind of what's behind his words here.
This is an ambitious new plan that invests $3.8 billion of new funds across 3 pillars: protecting nature, building Canada well, and valuing nature and mobilizing capital. Nature is a force for our well-being. When we're protecting nature, we're protecting Canadians, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the rivers we swim in. That's why today we are putting in place enduring mechanisms to achieve that goal of protecting 30% of our lands and waters.
And pause it for a quick second. That was the end of the clip. You will own nothing after this. Alberta is the one province that really has the time frame and the independence movement far enough along, it can break free. Saskatchewan has waited. They're waiting for Alberta to go first to blaze the path. But if Mark Carney gets that majority on the 12th of this month now, he's going to start federalizing everything. He's going to want to federalize the land. He's going to want to take 30% or more of the lands in these provinces to make it even harder to separate. Alberta needs to stand strong. This is the last real chance for independence. Maybe not just for Alberta, but for a lot of provinces in Canada. Saskatchewan needs to start moving now if they want to have the same opportunity for a future that Alberta does have.
But he also spoke about tokenization, and I think you just breezed past it. So do you want to explain what the tokenization of the environment means in general? Because I think it is pretty worrying that they want to be able to control it through giving it a price for themselves as well, and for them to be able to benefit from it without the citizens actually benefiting from it as well.
Yeah, the first step, they need to take control of all these lands, federalize all the lands, take away a lot of the rights you have on your own land once you purchase it. So you'll no longer have the rights to any oil or natural resources that are on that land. Then tokenization is the next part. We'll kind of go into that more later in the week. I have more articles lined up for that.
Okay. Posts. From Unfiltered with Kells, quote, Mark Carney just announced $3.8 billion for a new nature strategy to hit the UN's 30 by 30 goal. I spent the morning digging through the 2030 framework and the legal fine print, and the math has me a bit worried.
And we're going to go into this. She did a great analysis, because a lot of the time when you see Mark Carney, he virtue signals like this is the future, this what is new, what needs to happen. He's consolidating power amongst the federal government, and he wants to make sure provinces can't get independence because there's going to be too many hurdles.
Did you see Mark Carney's announcement today? $3.8 billion for a new nature strategy. It sounds like a win for the environment, right? But if you own land in Canada, you need to look at the fine print, because this isn't just about the trees. It's about the legal end of private property as we know it. The goal is called 30 by 30, protecting 30% of Canada by 2030. But the part that they're not telling you is that the federal government only owns about 6% of Canada's landmass. Even if they protected every inch that they own, they aren't even close to that 30% target. Independent reports are clear. Canada cannot meet those targets without your land. That is why we're seeing such a sudden push for opt-out models. They need your private property to make the math work for the UN, and they're using $3.8 billion of your tax dollars to ensure that they get it. You might think that you can just say no, but in Canada, property rights are not even in our charter. They're using something called de facto expropriation.
A lot of this land they want to grab is right down by the border where everybody lives. They don't need to grab all the land. They can do that later because there's going to be no resistance on that land. They want to grab the land that has private property ownership on it. This is a multi-pronged approach to make sure private property rights go away in Canada. We see the other pronged approach with First Nations, the UN, the provincial government, along with the federal government in British Columbia. This is a completely another approach coming from left field, and hopefully people are going to wake up and recognize this. But again, if Carney gets a majority government, he may be able to push this stuff through.
Recent court rulings in BC to the St. John's versus Lynch case, the precedent is being set. The state can override your land title, freeze your property for conservation, and pay you pennies on the dollar because they technically didn't take the deed. It gets even deeper. Under UN Target 22, they're recategorizing land as indigenous-led. But look at the 2017 China strategy. It's a roadmap for foreign state-owned enterprises to negotiate directly for our resources while you are locked out for well-being. It's a geopolitical backdoor that bypasses Canadian sovereignty entirely. They tell us we'll own nothing and be happy because we have access to parks. But access isn't ownership. You pay the taxes, they keep the control. I've spent all day digging through the court cases and a legislative small print that the mainstream media is ignoring. And if you want to read my full unfiltered report, the link to my Substack is in my bio.
And that backdoor that she's talking about for foreign governments to get access to these natural resources rather than the provinces and Canadians themselves is this tokenization approach they're going to take. First, they need the first step, and this is the first step.
And again, I will say, remember what just happened in British Columbia. I think a lot of people forgot about it, just bypassed because it's just too depressing to figure that out. And she says Canada has sovereignty or is losing its sovereignty. It hasn't had sovereignty for a very long time.
Well, and it's very interesting approach what they're doing. They have what's going on in BC with the land grabs, which is almost a completely different approach to what the federal government wants to do. So they want to do it on provincial levels. At the same time, they're doing it on national level. A lot of the words you would search and look up to look further into this is going to get confusing. It's probably going to bring you to information what's going on provincially. So it's going to completely kind of mask and hide what he's trying to do on a federal level here. This is a much bigger story than people are reporting today.
Thank you so much to Cole for the $10 super chat asking, have you heard of Promethean Updates? It's a great source of U.S. history and the global elite. Good show today. I think you've seen it.
I watched something called Prometheus Action Group. That may be the same one. We're going to profile the creators of that channel. Also, a lot of people on their think tank. We profiled yesterday, one of those people being Martin Armstrong, as well as Tom Longo. It's a fantastic string of thought and the way they game plan things out as far as U.S. politics go, but they also go into geopolitics and they tie a lot of things back to the city of London. So if that is the same channel, because they're both called Prometheus,
this is Promethean Updates.
I'm not sure.
And Cole says, I read on X the signature collection isn't going well. Hopefully it is. And then James Halliday says, LOL, I'm a canvasser and the signatures have reached the needed amount. So we have a month to go and we're there, I think. And we're there. I think we're pretty good. Well, again, I think it won't be until all Albertans that are able to sign go sign that I think you should say, okay, now we're done. Because even if you did reach the 177,000 target, you need to send a message now. Like, do continue to keep getting signatures, especially now with the court injunction coming out on April 7th.
Well, and I will say this, I'm not saying anybody is a bot in the chat, but today was the first day and the signatures kind of were recognized yesterday that we hit the number we need. And we even have a buffer room there. I noticed bots starting to flood the chat before the show as well. So we do read all comments. So there may be some back and forth from here on in. And some of those back and forths may be bots. And it's people that are bots that are nationalists.
Well, this bot just didn't make a lot of sense. It was the first two messages that we received, if you want to go see which ones they are. But I can pretty much tell when it's a bot because we used to get botted a lot when we used to talk about Candace Owens, funnily enough. And they usually come in first before we even kind of started or set up the show. And then they just shut up afterwards. Like it's 2 or 3 messages initially and then they go away.
Yeah, the federal government is going to start mounting an offense here. They've been rather quiet coming up to this point. I watched an hour interview last night with Jason Kinney on some liberal show. I was absolutely yelling at the TV somewhat, but by the end of it, I was very heartened because he had very little to say and his talking points have gotten even weaker since his last debate. I don't expect much from him when he goes into the debate against Keith Wilson there.
And hold on, Roland Halleck says Alberta needs to get out. The money coming in would triple if we're out. The UN needs to shut down, the same as the EU and NATO.
Yeah, the UN right now is becoming the big globalist force. It needs to get shut down. Trump is really mounting an offense against a lot of the globalists, especially the UN. I wish he would go even harder at the UN at this point, especially consider what's going on in Canada. Everything that's going on with private property rights is its origin is with the UN, and I've gotten in a few debates with what's going on in BC. The UN is the origin point of all this stuff, and they're not just doing it in British Columbia, they're doing it in other countries in Central and South America as well. We follow that too.
Yeah. Chile, for example.
Yeah.
Roland Halleck says natives in BC never had a treaty, so what they did was illegal anyway. And
I was watching the interview with, oh God, we're going to show a clip of it later on in the show, but it was with Keith Wilson, and it was absolutely fantastic. He went through a lot of that. A lot of the roadblocks every other province is going to have is taken out of the way for Alberta. Now, if Mark Carney makes this land grab on a federal level, that's going to put another roadblock in front of every single province. So much so they're not going to be able to buy that land back because it's going to cost so much.
And Cole says that, yes, it's that same channel you were talking about.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that is an absolutely fantastic channel. I've been following them for years, mainly because I used to do a lot of analysis with the Trump administration and U.S. politics, and that was a fantastic resource. And that's the Prometheus Action Group.
2 more comments and then we go on to Alberta Stay Free and saying what's going on with the petition. But Primoris007 says, hola, Nat E, the guy, hello, says, I'm not a bot, which is what a bot would say. We know you're not a bot, don't worry. And also asks, what are your guesses on Trump's address tonight?
We're going to see. I think he's going to say 3 more weeks. He's slowly getting, and this is what I said when I first did my analysis of the Iran war. He wanted to be in and out. And you kind of agreed with him a lot more than I did. That being said, my big fear was, I said it was fine to go over there if you can make it in and out, but I would prefer not to engage in foreign wars in the Middle East because you can slowly get sucked in. And that's what we see happening now. And I think he's going to tell the American public another 3 weeks. I hope he says he's going to cut his losses and pull out at this point, especially with the midterms coming up.
I think that's more likely. And you and I have disagreed, and we've had a huge debate about that a while ago, but yeah.
Well, when it comes to Trump, anything is possible, but he does not want to make this a long-term war. We've kind of said that from the beginning. My caveat was he could possibly get sucked in.
And Cole, just because these next two have something to do with this question, Cole says, I know you didn't ask me, but I think he's announcing a withdrawal from NATO and a winding down of the war in Iran since they have achieved the objectives. And then Primoris007 says, I think it's a final NATO ultimatum instead of actually withdrawing.
I think there's too many strings attached, and he doesn't have the ability to do it through executive order, I think. And Congress just isn't going to do it. The uniparty still exists in big effect there. MAGA only has a certain portion of the Republican Party at this point. I mean, that's that's best case scenario, kind of what you pitched there. And I hope that is what happened. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he's going to say another 2 or 3 weeks.
And just quickly,
but he should absolutely pull out of NATO at this point, and he has every justification to do it.
Especially now.
I loved Marco Rubio's statement the other day. We may get into it on Rumble either today, RUMBLE today or tomorrow. That's kind of where we cover a little bit more international politics.
But going into the Stay Free Alberta section, hello to Rusty Wiener, #1 on RUMBLE, saying we should be collecting signatures up until the end. If nothing else, it gets more people thinking about freedom. And I completely agree. The target should be every single Alberta having signed the petition, just to send a message, if anything else. But
absolutely, 100,
not getting complacent.
100%. We want to get over 400,000, which is the other petition. The only way we can do that is continue to get signatures, although that kind of prevents the nationalists from building this narrative that the other petition to stay in Canada had more signatures. That's not the case. That had big money behind it. We're talking tens of millions of dollars.
From interesting sources.
The Stay Free Alberta petition was completely grassroots. It had about $1 million of small dollar donations from Albertans.
Yes. Let's go into all of that.
Free home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And yes, starting with this from Sean Amato saying, quote, separatist leaders in Alberta say they now have enough signatures to force a vote on independence and are inviting the premier to join their movement. As Sean Amato reports, it comes as a UCP MLA still refuses to clarify exactly where he stands.
Yeah, and I just want to make it clear, we do have the votes. Those votes are going to get certified by an independent accounting firm. Signatures are going to get verified by an independent accounting firm. The reason we're going that direction is so we can put pressure on the federal government. If we submit them now and they sit on those signatures and we don't reveal how many signatures they were by a verified source like an accounting firm, this gives the provincial and federal government a way out. We want to make sure we can maintain pressure on them. And it looks like we have more than enough signatures. The thing is, we want to continue to gather signatures because, again, like you said, and like Rusty said, this will send a statement.
And here I would completely, because we see how they're trying to frame things, I wouldn't put separatist, I would put independence movement.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell any other content creators, and we do have a few content creators that are out there that watch us, if we can use the independence movement. I used to make the same mistake when we first started. I was calling it the separatist movement. Call it the independence movement because that's what it is, and that's the framing we want to work in, especially on an international stage. So when we start approaching American content creators or international content creators or even conservative content creators within Canada,
Yes.
the nationalists obviously are going to keep saying separatist, and we have to keep calling them out.
But also from Freedom Calendar saying, quote, 600 billions of projects nuked because of elbows up XE retarded woke policies. Time for Alberta to leave Canada now.
And this is another state free gathering that Keith Wilson was at. I mean, he's really doing the Lord's work, the amount of speaking events and interviews he's been doing over probably the last year.
You can't leave because it will create investment uncertainty. And what have we witnessed? $600 billion worth of projects that were proposed and approved by companies and investors to go ahead in Alberta were scrapped because of the uncertainty that Ottawa continues to create about whether or not projects can even be approved, or how much carbon tax, industrial or otherwise, about emission regulations, net zero rules. You can't leave.
Okay, and there was a very specific reason I played that clip. Later in the show, I'm going to show portions of the interview with Jason Kenney on some liberal podcast. And this was one of his main talking points, was what he tried to build fear through what happened with Quebec, and a lot of business investments fled. Alberta is in a completely different situation. This isn't the financial sector or the banking sector. This is the natural resource sector. They're stationed there because the raw resources are there as well. They can't just leave the province. There's going to be a lot more investment flooding into Alberta. This is a different situation than Quebec. Number one, because Quebec didn't have the balls or the backbone to actually vote for independence. They chickened out at the last minute. That being said, Alberta does, and Alberta is going to follow through with this, and the world is going to see it was Canada holding Alberta back the entire time, and anybody that looks at the numbers can see that at this point.
I also just saw a CEO come out to say on a news talking show that yes, they cannot continue further investments into Alberta because of the regulatory discrepancies and uncertainty that exists, especially within Canada. And that was an investment towards Alberta.
Well, one of the commenters a minute ago was saying we're going to see 3 times the investment, and I would say we're going to see more than 10 times the investment. I used to work in the mining industry as well as the oil industry, and the mining sector is severely underinvested in Alberta and in Canada in general. And there is a huge need for a lot of mining resources right now, as well as oil, as well as all the subsectors that are going to come, like manufacturing and stuff like that, that really work well with the oil and mineral sector when they already have refinement within the province.
But especially in the mineral sector, also having the ability of knowing and controlling who is actually coming in. Because again, a lot of those Canadian mining companies that are peppered all over South America and Latin America, just in general, are actually CCP-controlled Chinese companies with the Canadian name on top of it.
Well, again, I can't I can't say this enough, and this is why I put those 2 clips at the beginning of the show with Mark Carney. What he's pulling right here, he's going to bring communism into Canada when it comes to its natural resources, and he's going to do that first, because once he controls the natural resources, he's going to be able to spread socialism and communism into every sector. This has been the plan. We've talked about it for well over a year, what the UN is planning, and Carney is in complete cahoots. If Alberta doesn't separate now, they're going to see their natural resource sector get taken by the federal government. That's what they're planning to do. That's what that announcement was today.
And because back then, when Mark Carney was in the shadows, one of the puppeteers trying to control everything else, this was one of his pet projects as well. This was one of the things that he had been trying to implement for the longest time. And speaking about for the longest time, of course, not within his own Brookfield Asset Management that still has a lot of investments in oil, for example, but in the Middle East. But he's been speaking about this for a very long time now. And now that he has the ability and opportunity to actually control a country that, funnily enough, has a lot of natural resources, well, he's going to start, of course, implementing it.
Well, you're already sending remittance payments, all kinds of green tax payments back to Ottawa. he's about to take the rest of what's left there through these land grabs with the UN to protect natural resources. You're not going to have the ability to access those unless King Carney says, and then all that money is going to go back to him through tokenization. If you want that money to stay in Alberta and make life better for all Albertans, you have to vote for independence now.
But again, spending that many billions in nature, and what the actual plan is, while we continue to see reports, even from mainstream Canadian news, saying that more and more people are trying to access food banks, but the food banks are also running out of food because people aren't donating to them.
Yeah, and it's not really to protect nature. That's step one. And if you look into a lot of these UN documents, the tokenization is step two. So first they say they're going to protect it. But if they do want to access natural resources on that land, only they're going to have the opportunity to do it. And that money will go into groups of investors they choose through tokenization. Okay.
But also,
sorry, that Mark Carney story really got me going today because I was in the know about that story for well over a year now. And I was like, how are they going to implement this? There's so much pushback from Trump on globalization. Sure enough, Carney's the one trying to implement it on a national scale.
But also from Yukon Strong saying, and just like that, Pierre Poilievre on Joe Rogan was forgotten. FYI, an independent Alberta will ban the Junos, as they should.
And this was a funny post, but I brought it up, and we were very hard on Poilievre on the Joe Rogan interview because he didn't say the extent of what was going on in Canada. He kind of dumbed it down to make it look like Canada was better than the United States and we don't have the problems that we do. There are massive problems in Canada. Alberta independence is really the only way to fix it. Come the 12th of next month, these Pierre Poilievre supporters are going to have to realize that when Carney gets a majority government. And at that point, we need to call on them as Albertans to start supporting Alberta independence, no matter where you're from in Canada, because that really is the only shot to save conservative values.
But unfortunately, I think that will continue to be a pipe dream because we do see him aligning more and more with the Liberals, with Carney, sending him his text message updates as he traipses around the United States, trying to do what every single other Canadian that does not want to open their eyes is doing, which is say, oh, but we're better than the United States. Oh, no, but we're not as bad as people think. No, but immigration isn't that bad and nothing's going on. While even domestically, he says the complete opposite. So this two-facedness is coming out and flourishing more and more. And I hope more and more people realize that about Poilievre. And I would even say the national or federal conservatives as well, who have not done anything.
Well, you have to look at it from Poilievre's point of view. If Mark Carney gets a majority government on the 12th of next month with the 3 by-elections, if he wants to stay relevant, he's going to have to liberalize himself and start working with the Liberals. More. Otherwise, he can't do anything for the next 3 years. And I think that's his strategy. And that's not the strategy I want to see. I think Danielle Smith is realizing that too, and that's why she's made a slight move back to Alberta independence. I'm not still going to put full trust in her, but again, if you didn't watch yesterday's episode, she's agreed that the Alberta independence question is going to be on a separate ballot. It's going to be the first question, and they're going to count that question first. If Alberta independence wins that vote, they're not going to count the other 9 questions because she doesn't want to muddy the water.
But let's also remember what happened to those 4 conservative security and safety bills that they were trying to pass. Common sense things like, oh, let's not release violent criminals back and give them more opportunities based on random things. Those were all voted down by the Liberals. And then what happened? Yes, there was a lot of outrage and how dare they, this is common sense. And then nothing else happened. A lot of creators going online and saying, oh, how dare the Liberals ban or block all of these conservative bills that just make sense. That's just going to continue to happen, especially within the next 3 years where, yes, any common sense conservative bill that comes down will continue to be voted down, especially if Carney can continue to get his majority.
Yeah, and I'm willing to eat my words if there's a snap election called and Pierre Poilievre can pull off some miracle victory. But in my view, that's not going to happen. And that is the pipe dream. Alberta independence is a reality. It became even more of a reality yesterday when the signatures are kind of confirmed that we have the amount we need. We're going forward with this. The only way I can see Mark Carney even trying to stop this thing is calling the Emergencies Act. And that's why he's bringing this up to the Supreme Court and trying to challenge it all of a sudden because he wants to use it against Alberta independence.
But I won't eat my words. You said you'd eat your words if Pierre Poilievre, for some miracle, can pull off winning a federal election. Even then, it will take years to be able to get rid of all of the insanity that we've seen passed legislatively, but just in general within Canada for the past more than 10 years. It's going to take generations to actually see a change. So even if Poilievre can get in, even if he gets in with a majority, all this pipe dream thing going on, it's going to take a very long time for people that continue to suffer and continue to see the effects of what we've had with the liberal governments and the Liberals for the longest time for decades. It's going to take a generation. So I will not eat my words, even if Poilievre wins, because the situation won't change.
Yeah, I will say you are going to make an overnight change. This is the biggest vote of every single Albertan's life that is coming up here. This is not like voting for a new leader. This is voting to hit the reset button because Canada at its core is rotten, and there's too many things built into the system that just won't change. Even if you get a conservative for 4 years, the system is rigged towards the Laurentian elite.
Towards the east. Marty up north says, quote, here's a precise breakdown of the $1.75 per liter pump price for regular unleaded gasoline in Alberta as of April 1st, 2026. When the price of oil goes up, it directly impacts the feedstock, crude oil, and refining components. Most of the taxes are fixed at a rate, cents per liter, and stay the same. The GST collected by Ottawa definitely increases because it's calculated on a higher base. The poor retailer doesn't make a whole lot of profit on gasoline. In fact, they make more money on a bag of chips than they do on a liter of gasoline.
The taxes is taking up the majority of the cost there, almost as much as the crude oil itself. This is crazy, and there's a lot of things you're going to be able to do once Alberta gets its independence. And I was talking about the airline sector and charging a very limited tax on jet fuel. If you do that, you're going to make either Calgary or Edmonton the hubs where they come in for refueling and then they push flights out from there. It could be absolutely massive. And why is that important? Because if they have empty flights that are going there just to refuel because the cost of fuel is cheaper, they're going to want to fill those flights and make them extremely cheap just to have people on board. And this is going to bring a lot of people into the province for tourism and other things.
Mm-hmm. But also from John Smith, quote, Canada just lost 256,000 high-income earners in the past 24 months, yet lost 0 persons who rely on government for 100% of their existence. Canada is bringing in many hundreds of thousands to be 100% reliant on the taxpayers. This is the formula for failure.
Well, and this is how you have the replacement theory for your voters. This is how you get a new voting bloc that you can indoctrinate and will vote for extremely far left policies that people that were born in the country know better and just would not vote for. So a lot of these people that are fleeing, if you can go back to that post.
Oh, I closed it.
Oh, okay.
256,000.
256,000 people left last year, 41,000 from British Columbia alone. Mm-hmm. Again, this is the block of people that are independence minded. We can get to move to Alberta and use the United States as their safety net if independence doesn't work out.
Okay, now we'll go into some comments. Glenn Gunn, hello, says we already have them, the signatures.
Yeah,
but keep going. Keep going, I would say.
And again, at the end of each section, we read the comments before we go into the next section. This is the end of this section. We're going to go into Alberta Politics next. Mm-hmm. I think that was a bot that was saying the signatures aren't going well. I'm seeing more and more bots on.
Oh, no, I think that was an actual person.
No, not him. He's responding to the comment that they said earlier that the signatures were going bad.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember when you read that comment?
Well, no, because that was Cole. Cole was the one that gave us a super chat. So.
Oh,
no.
And he said the signatures were going bad?
He saw on X today that the signatures are going bad.
Oh, I don't.
Isn't going well. Signature collection isn't going well.
As far as I see, it's going absolutely fantastic right now. But a lot of people did have it in their mind that we were going to reach that million. And there was a lot of roadblocks put in our way to try to stop us to even get the 177,000. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people that had this idea of a million see the number that's coming in and...
Well, which is why just because the goal was the target was reached, the goal has not been reached, and you want 5 million Albertans to have signed the petition, even if they don't want to separate. That just sign so you can say, yes, we want a referendum. We want to be able to have the option to vote on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Troglodyte says, Hecho en Mexico or made in Mexico. I am. Walker says, hello, guys. Walker. Hello.
Oh, Walker, good to see you. He was one of our longtime followers from
From my Spanish channel from way back.
from El Salvador, I believe.
Yes. Walker says, hello, guys. Have you talked about NASA's launch to orbit to the moon?
We talked a little bit about
launch to orbit the moon. Sorry.
Well, we talked a little bit about that. We actually, one of our viewers brought it up, so we turned it on and watched it just before we went live.
But just about that.
Yeah.
And then you started with the conspiracy theories, and I stopped him. Cole says, is there any updates since the stream ended? I mean, I guess I would like to know, but is there going to be any updates? Interesting ones? Are they going to reach the moon today? I don't know how it works.
I don't think they're not.
No, they're not going to the moon. They're going to orbit.
They're not going to the moon.
Okay. So are we all waiting to see if they can orbit the thing? Or
Well, I don't know. I'm going to be very interested if they go to the moon, because I still don't think they had enough fuel on the first mission. The last time they said they went to the moon. And a lot of things are starting to come out, and then you just lose all that technology. I know it's a conspiracy theory, but we'll leave it there since we're not talking too much about the moon.
Justin GP, hello, says, hi, Nat and the guy. Just want to let you know both of you are awesome. Thank you so much. And so are you, because Jess is a canvasser. So doing literally the hardest part of his work out there. Cole says, there are so many more talking points Pierre could have polished on besides economic policy. He gained popularity with the trucker convoy, but won't stand for conservative social issues. Even during, I mean, again, we were pretty involved during the trucker convoy. Even then, he waited a very long time before he came out to say anything. And people gave him, because nobody else was saying anything and no federal politicians were actually speaking on it, a lot of people praised him so much for coming out in support. But that was at the point where he could have and would have been able to do so even way before he actually did. Maxime Bernier, not to throw flowers at him too much, but he came out almost at the beginning of the whole thing.
Okay. Well, I was going to say he needs to take the gloves off, and I keep saying that, and I think the National Conservatives are going to wake up on the 12th of next month that he never took the gloves off, and he lost extremely politely. Meaning if Mark Carney wins those 3 by-elections next month, he has a majority government. Poilievre had the ability to rally the other parties and call a snap election. I know he's way down in the polls, so he was scared to do it. That's what taking the gloves off is about. Meaning if you know he's very likely to get a majority on the 12th from next month, you call that snap election and you do whatever it takes to have to win. You go hard at him. You don't put Canada first when Mark Carney is trying to drive Canada off an absolute cliff.
Troglodyte says, BC fuel taxes are nuts. In Metro Vancouver, drivers pay approximately 63 cents per liter in various taxes.
Yeah, they want to get rid of all automobiles in Canada. That's becoming very obvious at this point.
And Aid says, did the carbon tax on gas go up? I just got up.
Yeah, it did. And we're going to have a story about that in just a little bit.
Primors 007 says, maybe the X post was the bot. Maybe, because we like Cole. And thank you so much to Cole for being here, and Primors as well. Silverfeet says, okay, before I get out of Comunida, I'll hop to Alberta to vote for independence.
Yeah, and we did have a commenter last night, and we're still going to confirm this, but I'll put the information out. If anybody knows better, let us know. We will make corrections. Yeah. The commenter said he's from Alberta. He said the vote's on October 19th, so you have to be in the province by July 19th, so you can switch your mailing address, go to the DMV, and make sure everything's kind of in line, so you can vote by October 19th. So don't wait till July 19th. Try to do it a little bit before that if we can. And again, not everybody's going to have the financial means to move to Alberta, but a lot of people have been planning to leave Canada and have financially prepared to move to the States. Rather than move to the States, move to Alberta if you're going to vote for independence, and you can always use the US or Mexico as the backup plan.
A Quebecer in Alberta says, the earth is flat and they've never been to the moon.
I was making those same jokes before the show with Nat. I don't think they have been to the moon. The fuel...
I don't know enough to really comment on it.
The fuel to actually get to the moon, that doesn't make sense, but there's so many other things that don't make sense, including the technology ceased to exist after they got rid of all the blueprints and everything. Come on.
Okay, we're not a conspiracy show, so let's move on to Alberta politics, which is not a conspiracy. It's very real.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
Starting with from Lori Goldstein saying, quote, industrial carbon tax goes up again. There's the answer.
And this was today it went up, which is crazy, especially with everything going on in the world. and all Mark Carney's policies, for him to continuously raise it at this point when Canada is in the financial situation as it's in, and then to buy oil from everywhere else around the world except Alberta.
At a time when the cost of living is a major concern to Canadians, Canada's industrial carbon tax increases by almost 16% on Wednesday to $110 per ton of emissions, on its way to $170 per ton in 2030. Finally, the men that said that they were going to remove all the carbon taxes on oil, at least for a little bit, well, now we see what the actual plan was.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see, it's going to continue to go up and up and up, and he wants to get rid of the natural resource sector by 2035. He wants to put them out of business with all these taxes and regulations. And with the way things are scheduled, that's exactly what it will do. But he's also trying to do the federal land grab now, where he's going to take control of a lot of these natural resources. So what you're going to see is he's going to put the natural resource sector out of business. At the same time, he takes control of all the land the natural resources are on. Once he has control of that and he has it tokenized, so the money goes to his global friends outside of the country rather than the people in the province and in Canada, that's when he's going to take all those regulations down. And Canada now has a communist natural resource sector. We see both those plays coming in today.
But also to everybody that thinks that, oh, the carbon tax only affects a few or only affects like the big producers. No, it affects, how do you think food gets to the grocery store? How do you think things are produced? What do you think is needed to actually get you to eat every day that you can't even eat that much in Canada right now because of the cost of living crisis? It is fuel that essentially moves everything in your life, even if you don't notice it.
Yeah, and again, sticking with Canada is a huge financial risk Alberta just can't take at this point. I mean, watching some of these debates where they're talking about Alberta independence is a risk. No, sticking with Canada and Mark Carney's crazy plan once he has a majority government. I mean, with a minority government, he is able to start digging the grave for Canada. When he gets a majority, he's going to throw the body in there.
But Daniel Smith coming out and saying this from Rebel News, quote, Premier Smith calls new NDP leader Avi Lewis's plans to nationalize sectors across Canada pretty communist, and remarks that Alberta NDP leader Nenshi has to abide by the anti-energy policies due to the federal party's constitution.
Well, and I'm glad she's saying it out loud, and she needs to do that as the Alberta premier, but she needs to do it to Mark Carney, because as much as Nenshi and the NDP is saying these things, they don't have the same kind of power Carney does. And that play he did with the natural resource sector and the land grab, he's doing it on a federal level today.
He's actually doing it.
She needs to be calling Mark Carney out with the same veracity she's doing to Nenshi and the NDP here.
Can you speak to NDP leader Avi Lewis? Is the energy policies and building pipelines agenda different from the NDP's provincial policy?
Well, I don't think they can have a different policy, quite frankly. If you look at their party constitution, it says that in any matter not dealt with in the constitution of the New Democratic Party of Canada shall prevail. And it also says that the federal NDP says that even though they have autonomous federal provincial parties, they can only do so if their constitution and principles are not in conflict with the federal party. So we're getting a pretty clear idea of what the principles of the federal party are. They're pretty communist. They talk about nationalizing everything, from food to building houses to construction companies. You want everyone to have a heat pump and take an electric or an EV bus to work. So I think it's up to the provincial NDP to talk about how they're going to square the circle. If this is federal policy and they're required to conform with it, what are they going to do to implement it? And they can't hide behind we're a different party, because they're not. They share a constitution, they share a membership. So I think that it's pretty clear from Avi Lewis and his activism over the last number of years with the LEAP manifesto, which he repeated throughout the entire leadership campaign. He wants to end all fossil fuels, and that includes LNG. So he's got not just Alberta in the crosshairs, he's also got British Columbia. He's got Newfoundland and Labrador and Nova Scotia, who are trying to expand gas development and oil development. So I would say that it's pretty clear what the NDP position is federally, and it is opposed to any development of fossil fuels and any infrastructure that would facilitate it.
Okay, and this is why we need to get the NDP out of Calgary. They have a foothold in Alberta now, number one. But number two, Mark Carney wants to do the exact same thing the NDP does. He just does it in a much more sly way. He wants to nationalize all the natural resource sector within Canada. And then even worse than what the NDP wants to do, he wants to tokenize things to make sure the profits go outside of the country rather than stay in. That's the next step.
And again, when communists want to nationalize everything, because that is the goal, it is number one, yes, to control, but number two, do you think the government, the things that they have under control right now and are able to control, are they going that well ever in any country? Is the government ever able to fully, properly control and take hold of whatever industry they actually try to do? No, they can't. Look at the healthcare system.
It's going to be very interesting what happens with the NDP in Alberta specifically. There's already a huge fracture there. If they don't split and change the name or do something, that party is not going to exist anymore within Alberta.
Yeah, but also in Alberta from Kirk Lubimov saying, quote, Calgary is getting an outrageous 8.1 property tax increase. The city of Calgary portion increased by 1.2. The provincial portion of the tax increased by 19.8 for residential and 8.8 for non-residential. Absolutely disgusting. The UCP needs to cut that ASAP.
Yeah, it's not just the national government that's taxing people to death. This is why Alberta independence is so important. You can get rid of property taxes completely. Ron DeSantis in the United States already put that on the ballot. It looks like they're going to go forward with getting rid of property taxes. Trump wanted to do it through tariffs. There's been a couple hurdles coming in, but property taxes is a tax that should not exist. It's like treating a landowner as a serf. You better pay your pence to the king each and every year.
Well, technically, you don't
when you
even
buy
own it.
something, you pay a tax once, and that should be it.
Well, technically, if you have to pay every year to just live in property that you already own, that they want to take away from you anyways, do you actually own it?
That's
Is it
right.
actually yours? If you sell it, you have to pay even more taxes. Does that mean it was yours in the beginning? No.
You work a lifetime to buy a piece of property, and then you're on a fixed income, or a lot of older people are. A lot of people have to sell their home and go into a much smaller home as they get older, and it absolutely breaks their heart because very often that's the home they grew up in.
But also, Keith Wilson has outlined without all of the restrictions imposed by the federal government on a lot of industries within Alberta, not just oil, but a bunch of other ones as well, the real possibility of being able to not have property taxes or even taxes upon the citizens because of the wealth that Alberta actually has that has been hindered and has been managed and controlled by the federal government. What happens when that is taken away? Well, the real possibility of not having to pay taxes as individuals comes up.
Absolutely.
But from Juno News, Abby Lewis urges a fast shift to stable, independent economy with unionized jobs and renewable energy opposing oil and gas exports. The federal NDP leader also blamed high gas prices on another illegal war for oil.
Yeah, and this is the new NDP leader of the party on a national level. So there is a lot of conflict going on right now. He's obviously just going to align with Carney with this type of ideology. And Carney has a lot of these parties in his pocket now. It seems like even the separatist parties in Quebec are really just controlled opposition, and they're voting for censorship as well. I fully expect him to start voting with Carney too. It's almost like Carney's going to have a supermajority.
And when saying that, he's an oxymoron.
There's a question of energy development. And it may be that if the port in the north, whether it's Churchill or somewhere else, ends up being the destination for more oil and gas exports, that's something that we in the federal NDP do not think serves Canadians. The energy economy is extremely unstable. Just go and try to fill up your car.
And
It's
pause
more
it
than
for a quick
$2 a liter for gas.
second. And sorry for the audio for this clip. We will continue it, but I will say with the policies that the national NDP leader has, it's not going to work for anybody that's running in the NDP in Alberta, and that can create a real situation, meaning you could have another floor crosser go over to the Liberals here.
Gas is a direct result of another illegal war for oil, and oil is driving the price shock that's coming. It's going to make the cost of living even harder, and we think that we need to accelerate the transition to a more stable, secure, and safe economy and a more independent Canadian economy, which actually means not shipping our raw resources elsewhere, but using Canadian materials to create good unionized Canadian jobs across all sectors. And renewable energy can be a major focus of major investments here. Rob and I might not sing exactly from the same song sheet on that issue, but that is one issue among many.
There is
He sounds insane.
Yeah, there is no real green sector. It's been shown to be a fraud. It was pumped up by a lot of investment money that really didn't, the investors never got their money back. This was a scam all the way through, from solar to wind. I mean, you name it. A lot of things weren't calculated in, meaning the infrastructure for wind turbines put on off the coast, they never calculated how to connect that to the grid. Once you calculate that in, it's a cost negative.
But also, again, how is Nenshi going to square with all of this, especially in the province that he is in, the soon-to-be independent country? Sean Amato says, today I asked Naheed Nenshi if he's more likely to ditch the NDP name now that Abby Lewis is the federal NDP leader.
And my guess is if Carney gets out 2 of 3 by-elections next month, Nenshi may be the next floor crosser.
Are you still open to changing the party's name? I believe you were at one time. Does this make you more likely to do that?
I suppose the next step would be to change the name if people wanted to, but I think the example we've seen from BC United is that, shockingly, most people don't follow politics. We had a focus group recently where we asked people, do you prefer New Democrat or NDP? And a number of, engaged, thoughtful people had never stopped to think about that NDP stands for New Democrat Party. So given that, I think Albertans are smart enough to understand that we are different and that we are a alternative for them as a government in waiting.
Are you still open to changing
We have the dumbest voters in politics. They're not going to notice if we don't change the name.
They don't even care.
The NDP, I think, is going to be done in Alberta, whether they have to change the party name or Nenshi actually floor crosses and takes that parachute backroom deal so he gets a few $1 million on his way out the door. Also, his ideology fits right in line with the Liberal Party, so he could potentially change ridings eventually. I mean, right now he doesn't have a future because the direction the NDP wants to go, and he knows Albertans are just not going to vote for that.
But also, worryingly, in Saskatchewan, and hopefully not seeing this all over the place soon, but from the Globe and Mail, quote, Saskatchewan Premier, I'm considering social media ban for children under 16. And yes, Scott Moe says his government is planning to ask people in Saskatchewan for their views on banning social media for people under 16.
Yeah, and if Saskatchewan doesn't move now, there will be no independence movement. I'm going to put it very clearly. Scott Moe is not cooperating in the same way Danielle Smith has. She lowered the number of signatures that you needed. What he's doing here with censorship, this is just going to be the first of many. He should not even be considering this. Now, I know a lot of people would say, oh, we don't need kids on social media. It's more about free speech and censorship, and this is just another layer of that. Also, when it came to the firearms grab, he tried to make it look like they were standing up against it, but what he said is, if you have firearms, we'll protect your firearms, just you have to put it on a registry, and once the federal government is willing to pay a fair price, because they're not right now, we expect you to turn your firearms over. That's not protecting firearms, and this is not protecting free speech. And when this land grab comes in on a federal level, which we showed at the beginning of the show, Scott Moe is going to get in line with that, and he's going to think people don't know what's going on here. That's going to be the biggest block for Saskatchewan independence, and that's why it has to go now before the federal land grab happens.
But also, we've seen these kinds of policies already being attempted to be applied in Australia, in the UK, and number one, they don't work, and children are very able to circumvent all of that unless their parents give them the proper education as to how to use or not use social media. This government shouldn't be the parent should be the parent. But also, we see that this always extends out to the rest of the people and is as a control mechanism, or at least an information mechanism for the government to know who and what is online and what they're looking at. So it always goes far beyond. It's not just for the children, it's for the government to be able to have control over what you're seeing, doing, talking about, etc.
Well, also put the dots together here. The federal government is lowering the age of voting to 16 in some places in Canada. They're obviously going to set the precedent and then expand that out. At the same time, they bring a social media ban for 16 and under. They want to dumb down the voters. They're also going to probably bring these polling booths into high school. That's going to be a huge voting block.
But I do find this comment really funny from Scott Alexander Ballingal saying, quote, as I observe all the deranged Canadians commenting on social media from Facebook to X, one can make the case for extending the ban to include people up to 60 years of age.
Yeah, and again, I said Saskatchewan was going to wait for Alberta, and that was the good play because they're going to build the framework. There is a lot of big moves happening on a provincial and federal level right now. You need to start moving now. But
now we go into comments before we go into, what's the next segment? Alberta Personalities, and we do have a lot of video analysis kind of thing coming up. Troglodyte says, my Alberta family have all passed away. I'm sorry to hear that. Too bad, or I could reside there for a while from BC to vote for independence. I mean, you can maybe still can, but it is hard for, I know it is hard. It was hard for us. We saved up for 4 years to be able to leave the country, and not even province, but country. So I do understand it is very hard for people, even if they want to, and they're independence minded, and they want to escape the insanity that is the province or the country that they're in. It takes a long time, unfortunately. Primors007 says she should invite Mark. She should invite Mark back to Alberta and then kick him in the carnies on camera. Greatest premier ever at that point. I mean, in that case, yes, exactly. And Edward says, hi, I'm late. Hello, thank you for being here. Don't worry, we always have it on replay as well. And again, if you are watching a replay, you can always skip the Waitscreen and the introduction section or go to whatever section you want to, because we put the chapter markers in the comments, on the description, and on the video itself. So you can always skip around if you want to.
Well, I don't see how Alberta independence, if it does get to the vote, they don't get their independence. And I think if Mark Carney lets it go to a vote, one of the first things we should do when Alberta does gain its independence is invite Mark Carney to Alberta and thank him for all the hard work he did to get Albertans their independence. Why? Because every single policy he's bringing in on a daily basis is sending people to sign this petition and is going to drive them to the voting booth the day of October 19th.
Yes, and on RUMBLE, hold on RUMBLE, where are we? Hello, KP4U, and Rusty says it's amazing how abusive this is. Smith suddenly announcing changes to all the things we've been complaining about as the timeline of the last MOU runs out. For my own sake, is everyone familiar with? Okay, no, that's the next comment.
Well, at the same time, Mark Carney's making it look like he's working with Danielle Smith, going to throw pipelines and the same things. He's making this natural resource and tokenization land grab, and he's going to put the natural resource sector out of business on the long-term time scale. On the short-term time scale, he's going to try to stop Alberta independence by throwing a goodie bags of natural resource contracts. Those natural resource contracts won't last with the amount of taxes and regulations he's going to put on.
I just like this comment from Cole because this is my kind of humor. So Edward says, hi, I'm late. And Cole said, nice to meet you, late. I'm Cole. I do like dad jokes. But moving on to personalities, and we will look at, we'll continue reading your comments in a bit, but.
Well, we have one personality within Alberta Independence that I'm recommending today. And then we're having another one that interviewed Jason Kenney that I absolutely hate watch. That's a liberal. I don't recommend subscribing to them, but watching them to know the liberal talking points on a national level going into the summertime is important.
Yes.
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
So we're starting with the good one. Somebody that interviewed, I almost said Jason Kenney, someone that interviewed Keith Wilson. It is the Army of Great Men asking, can Alberta actually separate? A constitutional lawyer responds.
Well, and this was brought up by a viewer yesterday and recommended for me to watch it as soon as we were done with the show yesterday. I watched it. This was a fantastic interview. And the way he asked Keith Wilson the questions was different than everybody else. What he did was show the clips of all these liberal videos questioning why Alberta independence is not possible, and then having Keith Wilson actually address all their concerns and
destroy them, essentially.
Keith did a great job on that.
So let's watch this deranged individual first.
So, can they separate? No, they can't. And I think more people need to know this, that it is impossible for them to separate.
Boy, do people get this wrong. So let's do a really quick walk through history, all right? The Supreme Court of Canada ruled that it's part of our constitutional principles to enter into good faith negotiations. His understanding of the history, the law, and facts is just wrong.
So is there any province in Canada from a legal pathway to separation that has a better path to that than Alberta and Saskatchewan does?
No.
That was just the intro.
That was the preview of that interview. I highly recommend watching it. Obviously, we can't show the whole hour and a half. If we had time, we would. That being said, we're going to show one more clip just of the crazy questions liberals have been putting out through these videos on YouTube that he used to really show Keith Wilson the question and then have him dismantle it. It was a fantastic way to arrange the interview.
Yes. So moving on. Hold on.
And this is the guy that uses AI. He gets his AI questions and he reads them off, trying to convince people Alberta independence is impossible. And Keith Wilson absolutely dismantled him.
This is a question for the Honorable Keith Wilson. It's a simple question. Albertans deserve a real answer. Let's say your referendum passes. What's your plan when First Nations refuse to negotiate? Because their treaties are with the Crown, not Alberta. They don't transfer. They don't disappear. So what's the plan? Do you redraw borders? Do you exclude treaty land? Or do you try to force it? Because those are your only options. And if you don't have a clear answer to that, then you're not presenting a plan. You're asking people to jump without knowing where they land.
Let it play for a minute.
Oh, he got you on that one, Keith.
Yeah. Oh boy. I think everybody else can already answer it by now. So as I explained earlier, I'll just stay at a high level here because I went to the deep end of the pool on it. They don't have to, First Nations don't have to sign anything.
Okay, and you can stop it there. And he didn't realize that was going to be the next question. When he said he went to the deep end of the pool, he was previously talking that he is one of the lawyers in Canada that is very educated on First Nations land within Canada and went very, very in depth.
But even I know, I mean,
But
just
even
from
we know
reporting on it and talking about it, that most of the, if not, excepting a few tiny percentage, most of the land in Alberta has been ceded by the First Nations a long time ago, back in the 1800s. So.
Well, we also did a video on it in our video section. And there was one more thing I want to say. Oh, well, go into the next clip here.
Okay.
We want to make sure we get through all these questions. We're going to get through the first one right now. Let's roll the tape on the first question right now.
Can Alberta even separate?
And pause it. And this is the clip you seen in the beginning when they kind of made the trailer for the interview. I wanted to play the question in full, and it's a long question, but I don't know what he's smoking, but he's in La La Land here.
I mean, he's in Canada. We probably can assume what he's smoking.
But he's watching a lot of CTV, CBC put out a couple things where these other content creators are just taking their questions and reposting them, not knowing they've already been answered.
No. I just watched a CBC report by Andrew Chang, he is the best, man. But this one,
like, that gives you the authority on knowing what's actually going on. Like, that's how cooked these people's brains are.
it just laid everything out. I recommend watching it, but I will summarize that no, they can't. What happens if they get enough votes and the referendum is successful? It doesn't mean that they separate. It just guarantees that they get to start negotiations with Canada about the possibility of separating, meaning Canada has the final say. It also goes into detail about how they also can't do it because they don't own the land. The Indigenous people own the land.
And
the single most...
And it all came from this, and that's why all these liberals are saying Indigenous people own the land. Also, for all these land grabs to work that Carney wants to work on a national level, they want people to actually believe this. This is not the case in Alberta whatsoever. That being said, Carney is trying to do that national land grab right now, so Alberta needs to make independence happen now, not a year from now.
But it's also crazy to see how the propaganda actually works and how it's being spewed out by normies or liberals or whatever that is.
Important reason why Alberta leaving Canada is impossible. It's not their land to carve up.
They owned the land long before Alberta was even Alberta.
Would Alberta independence contravene the numbered treaties? The answer is yes.
The Supreme Court said after Quebec tried, they established that this just guarantees that they get to negotiate, but it could come to an impasse, meaning that both sides have to agree on the separation. And think of how many variables there would be. There'd be citizenship, there would be trade, there would be what dollar they are using, there'd be the pension. Like, it would be so complicated that even if it got, say, through the referendum question and the negotiation started, it'd be years or decades. So if you're in
it will not be years or decades. Every other independence movement that has happened has taken 6 months to about a year. We reviewed that yesterday. Keith Wilson literally dismantled this in depth. We can kind of stop it there, but it was a very good format to put it out there to kind of counteract that propaganda. And now what's going to happen from that, the liberals are going to have to go back and try to get better talking points. The problem is, Jason Kenney did an hour interview and he had previously debated Bruce Party. He went back, tried to get better talking points, and he's even dumber now than he was during the Bruce Party debate. And he's going to have to go against the number one person in Alberta independence, which is Keith Wilson.
But before we go to watch that bit of interview from Jason Kenney, thank you so much to Steve Dayon for the $6.99 super chat saying Alberta independence is our only path forward. It's the only way forward. Thank you so much. And yes, that is the only actual truth to even dispel all of these insane people. And it will also be interesting, and thank you so much once again, but it will also be interesting to see the debate between Kenny and Keith Wilson, because if these are his talking points, if this is what he's going with, then...
Well, this interview, I highly recommend it. It's annoying as hell to watch because she calls herself a conservative leftist. She's a far left leftist. I watch this all the time just to know what the left is thinking and what their talking points are. She had an hour-long interview with Kenny, and by the end of it, I mean, it's really obvious Kenny has nothing. He's straw-manning arguments. The one real argument he made, I was like, you're actually making arguments for Alberta independence rather than against it at this point. But the funny thing is, he did a self-analysis because she asks him at one point, well, don't we need a leader to go against this independence movement? Yeah, you do, but you can't put the leader of the NDP up against it because that's going to galvanize Albertans. You can't put Mark Carney up against it because, again, that's going to galvanize Albertans. The best you got is Jason Kenney, and that's going to galvanize Albertans as well. But he is the best possible prospect to potentially push back against Alberta independence. I was looking at his social media. He's all about going after the independence movement. But after Keith Wilson gets done with him, if he puts him in the ground with that debate and everybody kind of sees through him, they don't have anything left other than declaring the Emergencies Act and Mark Carney trying to use federal overreach of the law.
This is from The Line saying Jason Kenney talks Alberta separatism.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen on the line. Today, we're going to have Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. We're talking Alberta separatism. We're talking about the leadership of the pro-federalist movement. We're talking about the rise of Alberta populism. And we're going to ask some hard questions about how exactly we got to this moment. That's today. I'm your host, Jen Gerson, on the line.
Okay, yeah, and that is what they go over, but they go from a far, far left perspective. We're going to show a clip of kind of at the very end of the interview, she kind of pitches for him to take the lead on Alberta independence. He knows, and she's smiling while she's doing it all giddy, like she has the best idea. He can be the leader to go against Alberta independence. He knows they have no talking points, number one. And if you listen to that whole interview, you realize he's just straw manning the argument, number one. He also knows people in Alberta absolutely hate him. So they have nobody they can put up. And he suggests Pierre Poilievre. That will be the end of Poilievre's career. Pierre Poilievre's career.
Further end.
That will cannibalize a huge portion of his potential voter base, and he will never win an election after that. The fact that Kenney says that, Kenney doesn't have any skin in the game because he's no longer a politician, and that's why he can go after Alberta independence more than any other national conservative.
But it's also a perfect exemplification of the Overton window and how much it has shifted, because again, if this lady and Kenney call themselves conservatives while they're actually pretty much on the right and what liberals used to be even a few years ago, it just shows you where we are at this moment, especially in Canada.
Last question for you, and you've been very generous with your time, and I always appreciate it. So we're saying we need a kind of center-right leader in order to lead.
And again, I had done a video about Jason Kenney and Bruce Party with their last debate, and Bruce Party was phenomenal in that debate. That being said, nobody on the nationalist side wants to even take debates. So the fact that Jason Kenney is willing to do it, it's a real opportunity for the independence movement to kind of shine, number one. And I'll go into my second point in a moment.
Federalist campaign. Any of those kicking around?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of elected people. You know, here's one thing I would say to my friend and my leader, Mr. Poilievre, an Alberta, born and raised Alberta MP. I think one way that he can, I think he's been doing a good job, by the way, recently. His foreign travels, his more statesmanlike demeanor, his more constructive approach, dropping the caricature that was painted of him as a opposition Sharpie. I think one way he can really demonstrate to skeptical boomers in central Canada that he is really on Team Canada is to become a key leader in the pro-Canada cause if there was a separation here in referendum here in Alberta, in the same way that Jean Charest did in Quebec in the 1995 referendum. And my advice to him would be not to temporize about this, not to do it in half measures, but to be a strong, clear, consistent, outspoken voice for Canadian unity. Because that is his position.
And the problem with that is a lot of nationalists in other provinces actually agree with the people inside Alberta and the Alberta independence movement. A lot of people ask, why did we do a video on Kenney? Why did we talk about him? Because he's the only possible figure they can put up against Alberta independence. other than Poilievre. And when I say Poilievre will cannibalize his career, well, if Mark Carney gets a majority government on the 12th of next month, Pierre Poilievre's not going to be relevant for 3 years. And it's very possible he's going to cash in and go against Alberta independence.
Affirmed it, but he's been kind of, I would say he said it in response to questions, right? And he has said it implicitly. If there's a referendum, I think it will be both a responsibility and an opportunity, a huge political opportunity for him to give practical meaning to what he ran on in the last campaign. Canada first, Canada last, Canada always. I think he can be one of those key center-right leaders on this.
But Jason Kenney, why wouldn't the main leader be you?
Well, I'm done politics. I comment on the issues I really care about, like this, and I'd be happy to contribute in whatever way. But I think it's going to be a team effort. It'll have to be a team effort.
But this team still needs to have like a leader, like a main guy.
Or gal.
Or gal.
So we'll see how this comes together. I think it's there's got to be by the way, there's no one argument or there's no one spokesperson to persuade. I think it's got to be a lot. Like, I'm not kidding. I'm not being coy about this. It's going to have to be a broad tent and a lot of different arguments made to address different concerns that are out there. I'm happy to play my part. I'm not sure exactly what that will be. There's no doubt that my very presence annoys the hell out of the hardcore.
Right there. Okay. And I wanted to play it to right there. He knows it's going to galvanize Alberta independence against the nationalist cause. If he takes the lead, anybody they put in that position is going to do the exact same thing. But just seeing him go and interact with her about like, we need a leader, we need somebody to galvanize. And he's like, it's a team effort. You don't even have a freaking team. You don't even have talking points. After watching an hour interview with you, the talking points you have are straw man arguments that are going to be dismantled in depth by Keith Wilson when you go to debate him 2 times. I'm going to be surprised if he even shows up to the second debate. They don't have anything right now. They don't, and they're going to need, like he said, yeah, all the things that he said they're going to need, but they don't have it at a grassroots level. Carney's going to try to throw money at it.
And what they have is the propaganda machine that is the mainstream media, the CBC, the CTVs, etc. The harassment campaign that I'm sure will not only ramp up, but continue and will be ongoing until who knows when, and the deranged people that still support them.
Well, and it's important to watch Kenney. A lot of people said on our last video, why are you giving him any light of day? You have to know what your opponent's doing. Mm-hmm. And right now, even in that interview, he was saying, well, I'm taking debates and I'm trying to figure out the best arguments. He is the canary in the coal mine. Whatever best arguments come out through him and through these debates with Bruce Party, with Keith Wilson, that's going to be the framework the nationalists are going to try to use. So it's important to know their arguments so we can get ahead of them. We have a real grassroots movement. We have independent media on our side, international media on our side. Even the betting markets are on Alberta independence side. It's going to be hard to stop a movement like this unless you implement censorship or the Emergencies Act. And I figure Mark Carney's going to realize that real soon because the nationalists have nothing after watching an hour with Jason Kenney. I watched it so you didn't have to, but if you want to know what the liberals are thinking, watch that.
But also, and we've continuously said, both when we analyzed that debate he had with Bruce Party, but just we keep hammering on it, the nationalists one of the only few things that they have to say is the economics. It's all about economics, so we can just throw pipelines and goodie bags that will come with restrictions, as they always do with the federal government, and that will quell any kind of independence movement. No, it's not, because it's also about the cultural and the destruction of what Canada used to be that still remains kind of within Alberta patriotism itself.
Well, no, he had economics, and then within that hour-long interview, it was very obvious. He knew he needed more than economics because that's what he tried to focus with Bruce Party. So what he did was fear, fear, fear. And how he tried to pitch that fear was through the previous Quebec separatist movement. But it was a lot of straw man arguments there. I'm going to be very, very surprised if he does the second debate against Keith Wilson.
But also not realizing that the Quebec independence separatist movement is not the same, even in a little bit, as the Alberta independence movement is right now.
Well, and it's very important that the independence movement understands they're going to use fear, fear, fear. And that's not going to work because Alberta independence has hope, change. And we also have fear that we can use when we want. You just point at Canada. I mean, we do it every day on the show, but it's almost like when Barack Obama talked about hope and change, it was hollow. But what Alberta independence is talking about, hope and change, it's something real of substance. We want to start again.
And giving that substance every time that the points come up and every time that they have to debunk the insanity that is coming from the nationalists. But I will also say, I noticed I did a whole show yesterday in Spanish about Alberta independence and trying to explain it to Spanish speakers or anybody else that's not within Canada. And I kept finding and I kept seeing, unfortunately, a lot of, I have to call it misinformation by even very right-wing news sources. There's a very right-wing news source called La Derecha Diario that I usually use as one of my sources when I do my show. But they were saying, oh, they reached the signatures to trigger a referendum, which means they will now become the 51st state. So that those kinds of talking points are still out there, and people are still very confused about what it means and what the actual goals are. I'll continue to try to do my part also in Spanish to properly inform about what's going on. My show yesterday was 2.5 hours of me just trying to explain everything that has to do with Alberta independence. But I think there also has to be more of a push internationally that we will also try to do, not just in Spanish, but with US media, to fully explain properly what's going on. And I think Keith Wilson does need to do that a bit more.
There needs to be a pushback against the 51st state, especially when the summertime comes, because that's when the nationalists are going to try to push that, and they're going to push it through old clips from some leadership within the Alberta independence movement that have now changed their perspective. But the international media is still pitching 51st state. The American media, I've seen it, the European media, as well as the Mexican media. And you showed me that yesterday. So that's why we made a video about why we do not want to be the 51st state, because America, although it's a great country under conservative leadership a lot of the time, it can be very bipolar. Every 4 or 8 years, it has a new ideology. Alberta has voted consistently for the last 93 years for conservatism, and that's what you want. You want a conservative path forward when you have this much natural resources behind you and you have the ability to stand on your own 2 feet. But when you say you don't want to be the 51st state, it's also important to do it in a very respectful manner, saying Trump has done a good job with putting America first. We want to put Alberta first because Carney is putting them last. And why is it important to be respectful? Because ultimately you're going to need Trump to recognize Alberta independence, and you're going to have to go to him for natural resource contracts. Carney is going to want to say Trump is trying to divide Canada in order to conquer it, in hopes to get the independence movement to bite on that and to talk bad about Trump or separate them from him, so they can't get those contracts and he won't recognize Alberta.
But now let's go to comments before we go to the next section, which is just good reasons, better reasons for Alberta to want independence as well. But a Quebecer in Alberta says, what if the Liberals want Alberta to separate that way they would be in power forever? And we've flaunted that idea that, yes, I mean, in the end, it also almost kind of also benefits them to be able to continue to stay in power if Alberta leaves.
Yeah, I talked about that, and I said if there's no real resistance come the summertime or in the next few months, that was something I was kind of looking at. And when he's making these national grab for massive sectors of land that natural resources is on so he can tokenize it. Well, if Alberta leaves, BC, Saskatchewan, all these other provinces have more than enough natural resources for him, but you get rid of all the resistance if you let Alberta leave. So that is a possibility, and that's a possibility I brought up multiple times, but that's not something you want to plan for. You want to plan a real grassroots movement for the best opponent and the best arguments they're going to make and all the underhanded tricks they're going to do. You want a game plan for that opponent, not somebody that's not going to put up a resistance and actually let you leave. Because if that happens, that's best case scenario. And we have said it. And so far, they haven't put up the same resistance I thought they would.
So far.
But now that the signatures are in, this is the point I expected them to start ramping up.
And I also say Bill C9, Bill C22 up, and the other two that they have on the docket for censorship, that also can be used as a mechanism, and we are seeing them trying to push that through as fast as they can. So,
Yeah.
I mean, look at other places where things are going to start coming at you as well. Canadian Spider-Man, hello, says, dang it, late, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Again, we started streaming this week from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., so there was a bit of a time change, just in case you didn't know.
Yeah. And I am going to say this. Once Alberta independence goes through, I hope Saskatchewan is next, but they need to get their shit together. They need to start doing it now, and they need to wake up to Scott Moe because he's potentially sabotaging it already. I'm not going to be easy on him at all.
Jess in GP says, yes, everyone should watch Army of Great Men's interview with Keith Wilson. It's a great educational tool for us independence folks.
Yeah, and if you just want to have the talking points against these videos, because all the videos he brought up, although they look crazy to people in the independence movement, because we know the answers to these questions, when liberals see that, those are the talking points they're using. Yeah. So you want to know exactly how to dismantle these things.
I have Bauer says, can Carney stop this? Well, we kind of just went through it a bit, but...
And the game plan I had planned out for him to stop it was he's taking the... oh, God, what was it called to the Supreme Court again? The Supreme Court. Are you listening?
Yes, but what about the Supreme Court?
The Emergencies Act.
Oh.
He's taking the Emergencies Act back up to the Supreme Court to challenge it because he wants to use it again. What is he going to want to use it for? He's going to want to use it for the Alberta independence movement. I believe he'll potentially try to build a narrative of Trump wants to divide Canada in order to conquer it. This is foreign interference. We're going to implement the Emergencies Act in order to stop the vote. If he wants to stop Alberta independence, he needs to do it at the point before the vote happens, not after, because once the vote happens, there's a lot of things that are automatically triggered, and it's going to be extremely hard to stop, especially if Trump recognizes Alberta as an independent nation.
And especially for that Emergencies Act possibility, we have seen for the past year almost also Canadian propaganda media propagandize about the U.S. being the most dangerous country for Canada currently, and that the U.S. wants to come invade, and that a lot of Canadians are very scared of the U.S. coming in with troops into Canada to try to invade the country.
Well,
so that's already kind of there.
And if you're living in Alberta, you're going to say, well, that would be a huge overreach. It's not going to be an overreach if he can build the narrative of, again, Trump is trying to divide us so he can conquer us, foreign interference. We need to declare the Emergencies Act. He's going to sell that on a national scale. And once the polling is at a certain point for nationalists and national Canada, the majority of the people will have agreed with him. And then that's when he's going to do it. He's going to try to isolate Alberta. It's important that we stay strong and we kind of plan for these things.
Cole asks, does the Alberta Prosperity Project set up a new system in Alberta after separation?
Read that again.
Well, I'm guessing. Will the Alberta Prosperity, or has the Alberta Prosperity Project set up a new system in Alberta after separation?
I'm not sure. I know there has to be an interim government that goes into negotiations before the Constitution and everything else is formed. That's going to be a bit of a tricky time. Danielle Smith is a special character at that point. She is the one that has to push those negotiations through before another team comes in behind her with that intern government. So far, she really looked like she was muddying the waters, but she's now taken a step back. So I like a lot more after her statement she made the other day than I did a week ago.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that is why it is important to see and continue to watch the people starting to speak about the possibility of what could go into a constitution, what would it mean, who would be involved, et cetera, et cetera. Start thinking about that as individual citizens as well, because it's a citizen-led movement. It should be a citizen-led building of a nation as well, and not letting those special interest groups take a hold of the new forming of a constitution and get all that they want and need, and leaving the citizens behind. That is why it's important to, as a citizen, continue to be involved in it as the planning goes forth.
Well, we also need to build confidence in the people that are on the fence, and a strong leader would do that. Right now, Keith Wilson has a strong leadership role. He needs to be the face of this thing. A lot of content creators are now, and people within the independence movement are calling him calling on him to kind of step up. We don't want a million voices where the mainstream media can kind of pick a crazy talking point here or there and then pitch it as this is the Alberta independence movement. They're a bunch of conspiracy
Which
theorists.
they've started to do
and,
already.
And everything else. We need a strong leader, somebody that's trustable, somebody that knows the subject, and somebody that sounds sane. Keith Wilson is that person. I want him to be the president of Alberta. That being said, he's vehemently against that. To push this thing forward, we need him to be the face of this thing, at least for the interim government, and while this thing goes into a vote.
And I think with the upcoming debates in May, that will solidify that a little bit more. Cole says maybe Kenny can do a letter writing campaign against Alberta separation. maybe that will keep them occupied for long enough.
But it's very funny because as much as Kenny is hated in Alberta, which I don't like him either, every other person is even in a worse position, whether that's Ninchi, whether that's Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, even though he's somewhat liked by some Albertans, if he turned against Alberta independence, he's going to have to take stances on certain issues that are going to be in conflict with a lot of national conservatives as well.
Yeah.
But if Mark Carney gets that majority government, it would not surprise me for Pierre Poilievre to step up and say, okay, I'm going to go against Alberta independence in order to maintain relevance.
And Charlie Default says, hi, people. First time here. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Says, love the podcast so far. I like the info provided here. Like and subscribe. I did. Thank you so much. And yes, it really does help us out when people like and subscribe. It's free and it actually helps push us out a bit more. You can also share it if you want, if you feel so inclined, but not necessary. But now let's move on to more reasons for Alberta to become independent, meaning what's going on in Canada.
And at this point, it really is Alberta's Canada because Alberta's the one holding it up on its shoulders and propping Canada up. Alberta needs its independence. And anytime we go into national Canadian politics as it's related to Alberta, I mean, it's just reason after reason after reason to vote for Alberta independence.
Starting with, from Juno News, quote, Poilievre accuses the Liberals and NDP of expanding government control from grocery stores to resource agencies and says only Conservatives protect economic freedom. Have they? They want the government to control everything, including your money. And what have you done about that?
New NDP leader Avi Lewis says that he wants the government to open up a chain of grocery stores. Premier in Alberta, Danielle Smith, calls that communist. What do you think?
Well, she's right. This is the same NDP Liberal policy of government taking over everything. So look at it right now. High taxes and red tape block home building. So what is the NDP Liberal approach? Create a new home building bureaucracy. They block resource development. And so Carney, with the support of the NDP, creates a new natural resources agency. Businesses can't afford to start up in Canada because of high taxes and red tape. So the Liberals and NDP support massive corporate welfare that puts the state back in charge.
We'll play the whole thing, but I agree with them on everything here. It's a shame that next week or in
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks on the 12th of this month, Mark Carney's most likely going to get a majority government and he will have lost every opportunity to fix Canada. Canada will be in rubble by the time he has another opportunity.
Of business, the Liberals and NDP want the government to control everything, including your money. So if you want to be back in charge of your life, your money, your land, your family, your future, the Conservatives are the only ones that will do it.
But they can't. They don't have the opportunity, and they haven't thus far.
Well, just the way he's saying it there, you just see his face. He knows the 12th is coming, and he knows that's the end of his relevance. What's going to happen after that? I mean, national conservatives are going to have to wake up, and they're going to be saying to themselves, well, we have to leave Canada at this point. If you're going to leave Canada, you're national conservative because Mark Carney wins a majority. Alberta will welcome you in if you're willing to vote for independence. And you always have the United States or Mexico as a safety net if the Alberta vote doesn't go the right way.
Because otherwise, things like this will continue to go on, as we just saw with the breaking news we talked about earlier. Kirk Lubimov says, quote, farmers and ranchers are having a hard time selling in British Columbia because of the First Nations land claims. The court rulings. Now, Indigenous groups are telling prospective buyers that they won't endorse transfer of Crown licenses for grazing. Despicable. Quote, local Indigenous groups told the prospective buyer whose offer on the property had been accepted that they would not endorse the transfer of the Crown licenses, such as grazing and leases on provincial land needed to support the ranching operation.
Well, and this is on a provincial level. He's going to be doing the exact same thing on a national level. 30% of Canadian land. He's going to be going after farmland and a lot of the land people actually own. He doesn't want the land that's going to be the easy land grab. He wants that's going to be easy to go after later on. So Mark Carney's like, where he's going to bring this country and the way he's pitching it is so deceptive.
I would say further bring the country, because it's already in shambles. It's already insane. It's already insane that the good things like the carbon tax, things that make no sense, the healthcare system itself, the MAID program, like everything else that you can list off is already at an insane level. It's just going to ramp up and get worse.
I really, really feel for Canadian farmers. It's hard enough to farm in an extreme cold weather environment as it is. You only have a few months a year. And then on top of that, the over-regulation, everything else Mark Carney wants to do. He wants to start microchipping and tracking every single cow and farm animal. I had another story, I just couldn't fit it in. But what do you think that's going to do? How much do you think that's going to cost?
Sorry, I was checking something. But in BC, from your former quote, everyone knows it, but no one wants to talk about it. If Conservatives are divided in the next election, the NDP wins. But Dallas Brody and I just ended that thread. Today, I'm proud to announce the Unite the Right Accord, a historic commitment to ensure the unbreakable Conservative firewall in the next election.
Yeah, and this is good to see on a lot of levels. Number one, Dallas Brody is the only politician within BC that I know of that's speaking up against what's going on with these land grabs, which crazy. I hope she starts speaking up on what's happening, not with just with the provincial land grabs, but what Mark Carney announced today with the national land grabs as well. But this also gives an opportunity. If Mark Carney forms a majority government and there's no hope for the next 3 years, for independence parties to start to form, for Western parties to start to form and to say, okay, we might not have a majority Conservative government, but we'll unite together in a coalition like this. So you don't just always have to vote for whoever the Conservative candidate is they put up. I mean, Aaron O'Toole, come on, you give me another Aaron O'Toole and you're going to expect me to vote for that? At least if you have a coalition of parties, you can actually vote for somebody you believe in.
We are kind of seeing the merging of, or the transformation of Pierre into more of an O'Toole figure.
Well,
in my opinion,
it's going to be interesting what happens after the 12th, because in order for him to maintain relevance, he may have to align even further with the Liberals, which I hate to say, because I mean, man, I used to really be on Pierre Poilievre's team for a long time. I still agree with a lot of things he has to say. And it took a lot for me to come to the realization he's not going to be able to change the system which Canada exists in. Only Alberta independents can do that.
And for me, I think I just lost hope a bit longer and a longer time ago than you did. So I even would always continue to say even if he gets in, there's no opportunity for him to actually change things. Like this from the National Post, quote, how will they provide low-cost groceries if they have higher labor and operating costs than private grocers?
And you can click on the article.
Toronto. Okay. Hold on, because sometimes it doesn't let me look at it.
Okay, yeah, and this is the thing. They think they're going to open these government grocery stores. They don't realize grocery stores actually exist on an extremely tight profit margin, and they don't gain a lot. So you're going to save each individual person that's shopping in the store about $12 a month was the analysis, and you're going to start moving further and further towards communism. Cuba has government open grocery stores as well. Eventually what happens, they start limiting what you can and cannot buy. This would fit in perfectly with a programmable digital currency, which the legislation has already been drawn up for, even though it hasn't been pushed through. If Carney gets a majority, I would very likely expect that to come through.
Venezuela too. From the National Post, Anthony Furey says Toronto copy. No. Toronto copies Mamdani's worst idea, socialized grocery stores. How will they provide low-cost groceries if they have higher labor and operating costs than private groceries? It's hard to say what's
Well,
worse.
and you've seen this being pushed by the Liberals, by the NDP, by mayors across Canada. You do not want this for your future, Alberta.
It's hard to say what the worst part about Toronto City Council is voting in favor of government-run grocery stores. Perhaps it's just that. Shockingly, it's the real thing that actually happened, taking valuable time and resources away from serious governance that could improve the livability of Toronto. Last week, Councillor Anthony Peruzza put forward a motion that City Council establish a pilot project to open 4 municipally operated grocery stores within the City of Toronto. The locations will be chosen with priority given to neighborhoods with limited access to full-service grocery stores.
You can leave it there. They don't want to fix the real problems that lie underneath the surface for long-term success. They're falling off the economic cliff right now, and they want to put a Band-Aid on that is really window dressing. Oh, we're fixing the problem. Government run grocery stores. You're creating more problems. This is going to pile on in the long term. It looks like a short-term fix for an uneducated person into politics, and in the long term, you're going to have to move more towards communism if you go down this path.
But also, again, we've seen how the government actually runs things and it doesn't ever turn out well. Look at the healthcare system and the fact that they don't want to, as you say, address the issues like, for example, the carbon tax that is making groceries a lot more expensive and the mismanagement of the Canadian economy as a whole. The fact that they just want to continue to manage and mismanage everything instead of looking at the actual issues just tells you they're not serious people.
Well, and again, somebody asked, what if Carney just lets Alberta go? And if you really think about that, with this massive land grab, which he's going to grab all the natural resources with it as well, if he lets Alberta go, there's going to be no path to resistance. Meaning, if he tries to make that land grab in Alberta, Danielle Smith or whoever's running that province is going to put up major resistance, and it's going to show other provinces the framework of how to resist the national government on that. But if he lets Alberta go, I don't think any other province has the backbone to stand up, and they're just going to let that land grab come in, and then they're not going to be able to have their own independence at that point.
But also from the Globe and Mail saying Canada, with a fading economic heartbeat, is no country for white collars.
Yeah, and this was interesting because...
Do you want me to click on it?
No.
Okay.
It's not even a country for blue collars. It is a country for white collars, or that's what it ended up becoming. Originally, it was a blue collar country that actually made stuff. That's what Alberta still is. And when you have a strong manufacturing section and other economic sections, that builds a strong white collar class. But without the blue collar class, you don't have a white collar class. And that's why you're seeing it crumble completely now. The last class to actually exist in Canada is the white collar class.
Well, I'd say it's no country for anybody that does not rely on the government, either for a job or to maintain themselves and keep living.
Well, yeah, it's the government class now. The blue collars went, the white collars are going right now as we see, and the only thing left is the government class.
But going back to that insane NDP convention and this lady, I will say, from Billboard Chris, quote, the NDP convention chair who became famous this weekend after complaining about being misgendered is lucky to be alive. Says transphobia is a pattern of negative conduct towards trans people that begins with misgendering and can end with violence and unaliving.
And we used to work with Billboard Chris when we lived in Canada, so I love using him as a source, and I love to see the success he's had on an international stage.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Smith. I'm a Vancouver lawyer and a QB member. I'm here to talk to you about why it's important to use appropriate pronouns for transgender people. But before we get that far, what do all these terms mean? A transgender person is someone whose gender identity doesn't necessarily line up with the sex that they were assigned at birth.
And the reason I'm showing this is not just to make fun of her. We need to get rid of the NDP in Vancouver, in BC, and in Calgary as well.
For example, when a baby is born and the doctor says, "It's a boy," we all expect that little boy to grow up to be a man. But that's not actually true for most trans people. Some trans people are assigned male at birth, but identify as women when they grow up. Some trans people are assigned female at birth, but identify as men.
Okay, I won't make you suffer through the rest of that because I actually have a better exemplification of where this goes. Because yes, we can make fun of it, we can laugh at it, but at the same time, these are the insidious people and ideas that have gone into institutions and actually changed them from within with things like compelled speech. But even further, she's a lawyer, so I want to go through what kind of things she's done in BC
Well,
as of now.
I'm just going to say this, within Calgary, you should not be voting for a party with these kind of principles. I can understand in places like Vancouver, Wokistan, Vancouver, or Toronto, stuff like that. This does not represent Alberta. The fact that the NDP has such a foothold within Calgary is crazy to me.
So let's go through this real quick because we are running out of time. Nick Osmond-Jones says, quote, "A lot of people are having a good laugh right now at the antics at the convention of Canada's New Democratic Party, or the NDP. In particular, this woman who has chaired the convention. Her name is Adrian Smith. And while the clips may be funny, there's nothing funny about her agenda or the influence she wields." Oh, now the thread doesn't work. Let me see. There we go. Nah.
Okay, let's just go to the next story. It's fine. We'll profile it tomorrow.
Okay, I'll try again tomorrow because I tried yesterday and it also did not work.
And that's why I have video format usually.
Hold on. There we go. Speaking of, from Alberta Proud Dad, specifically in Alberta, from Alberta Proud Dad says, quote, "Pick a lane, Naheed. You can distance from the federal NDP all you want, but Janice Irwin showing up in Winnipeg says plenty Albertans notice."
The head Nenshi is trying so bad to distance himself from the federal NDP party.
Really on the mic, it's hard as a racialized and transgender delegate to sometimes use this card and speak to somebody in front of me in line.
But who in his caucus attended that shit show of a convention? Of course she did, because this sort of shit is right in her wheelhouse.
Yeah, and we need to get rid of the NDP within Alberta. That being said, I am really fearing that the NDP in Alberta are going to be the floor crossers if Mark Carney needs a floor crosser after the 12th. If he only wins one or two of these elections, he's going to need a floor crosser. And I think the NDP is realizing they're really in a spot right now within Alberta because the National Party has just gone so far left and so communistic. Nobody's going to vote for NDP within Alberta. So what does that mean? If he wants to cash out or he wants a political future, he may very well be the next floor crosser. And we already seen one person from his party cross the floor.
We're also seeing in BC with your Fulmer and Dallas Brody joining forces that they're worried as well. Fighting in BC, David Eby was called desperate and despicable and a complete joke.
What does corrode confidence is instability, chaos, fights, poor relationships. So,
members,
honestly, is the leader of the opposition who just had an MLA arrested, is he telling me that he would bring stability to the government? I'm serious. That happened.
Member,
that happened.
Shh. Members,
so,
let's stick to the point, please.
So fights with
members,
First Nations.
Members, leader of the official opposition. Leader of the official opposition. Leader of the official opposition will come to order now. And Premier will conclude.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Hostility, avoiding extremism, bringing
members,
asking people who don't meet minimum standards of ethics to resign, basic requirements of leadership and government. Absent from the Conservative side, Honourable Speaker, we bring stability, we bring investment, we bring growth. The second highest.
Okay, you can leave it there. And that's confession through projection. Everything he was saying the Conservatives are doing, he's not only doing, he is emblematic of it. Not only the NDP within Alberta are at risk of being floor crossers, but David Eby himself. I mean, he's starting to be, the NDP's poll numbers within British Columbia are falling off a cliff right now because of the land grabs he let go through and then he tried to cover up. And all that came out in paperwork. People understand what's going on now. The thing is, if he floor crosses, well, that's 3 years of safety under Mark Carney.
Well, that was a little window into Mumbai, but now let's go to your comments. Drew Mitchell says, Canada is already gone. They just don't want it yet. They just don't know it yet. I think most do. They just don't want to accept it yet.
No, they
don't.
But
Albertans know it, and that's why Alberta will leave.
No, they don't know it yet, and they're waiting for Mark Carney to win a majority government. I'm going to be very interested to see National Conservatives' reaction at that point. Do they have enough balls and backbone to get behind Alberta independence? Because Alberta independence actually has the core values all National Conservatives actually want for Canada, but the Conservative Party just can't get because the rigged political system.
But the rest are living in a dystopia, and they're fine with that, apparently. Michael Rader says Americans will be. Hello, Rafa says hello. Hold on. Oh, you left. Okay. Charlie Default says, I've signed. Good. And says, let's get to 1 million signatures. And that is the push, I think. Again, until every single Albertan has signed the petition, I think the work is not done yet. Cole says, I am an American and would like Alberta as a state, but that isn't realistic. And it wouldn't be useful, I would say, for Albertans specifically, but maybe not even for the US either. Michael Drader says, APP, the Alberta Prosperity Project, developed a framework, but ultimately Albertans need to accept said framework. And that is why I will continue to say citizens themselves should be involved in the whole process. It was a citizen-led initiative. Let it be a citizen-led nation creation of a nation.
What did Cole say? He was from the US?
Says, I am American and would like Alberta as a state, but that isn't realistic.
No, and it's good to just let Americans know that they want to be their own independent nation, because we are consistently conservative year after year, and we don't want to risk every 4 or 8 years a new ideology in the States. But we do, like, people within Alberta are conservative-minded individuals.
Justin GP says, I nominate Nat and the Guy for the representatives of Alberta Independence.
I have absolutely nothing on Keith Wilson. No. I can't bat an eyelash at that guy.
No, but we will continue to support and talk about it till the end. And even after that. Charlie Default says, as a senior Albertan, I've written an anthem song for Alberta, Strong and Free. Find it on YouTube under my name. Cheers. Oh, we'll check it out, because we were looking for songs to play during those clips. So maybe we can use that one as well.
Yeah, maybe we'll profile it next show if we can remember it.
Yes, hold on, because the website crashed. 1 second. Rafa says, when will merch be available? I want a t-shirt with Guy's face saying Free Alberta.
That won't sell.
It would not. I don't think it would, unfortunately. Let us know if we are back, because I think we glitched a little bit. But Troglodyte says Dallas Brody is awesome, and of course they attack her like crazy.
Oh, absolutely! But
in the insanity that is.
There's an uprising of conservatism within within BC right now because of the land grab that's happening. I really hope people realize what Carney announced today is even a much larger land grab on a national scale than what they're doing in BC.
For some reason, our immediately chats are not showing up, but once we get there, I'll read all of them.
Okay, we're having a few problems with our stream, so if we're a little glitchy.
Troglodyte says, Polyev and the CPC lost me during the COVID and the convoy. We needed strong opposition, and that was MIA. And that was exactly my feeling as well, and my sentiment. Which is why I continue to talk about it. We're almost done. Hold on. Michelle Drader and Michael Drader says, Polyev is currently my MP in Battle River Crowfoot. If him brushing off the independence movement on Joe Rogan isn't enough not to vote for him, for the for sale or lease sign at his Camrose office is.
Not just blowing off the independence movement on Joe Rogan. That's what did it for me, absolutely. But the way he played down every major issue within Canada, he's supposed to be the official opposition. It sounded like he was pitching Canada to the rest of the world.
But again, this is interesting that he has a for sale or lease sign at his office in Alberta.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
That's what he said.
Yeah, everybody knows he's looking for a new riding. On top of that, when he needed Alberta was there for him, and he went to one of the strongest ridings for Alberta independence. Mm-hmm. And now it's going to be interesting if Carney gets that majority government. I really do think Polyev is going to be speaking up, and he may be the face against in the independence movement.
But now let's go to see what's going on with Alberta and the world.
Okay, and I will say this. We're not going to have a chance to get to all the stories within the Alberta and the world section.
We can do it pretty quick.
No, I want to log off by 7 so we don't conflict with the unacceptable fringe. If you haven't seen the show, absolutely fantastic. We will go over to Rumble, so if some people do want to follow us over there. But we have a companion to our YouTube show, which is our X account. So any stories we don't get to are always posted on there. Every single story we talk about is also posted on there.
Marian Awful says, quote, countries that have closed their airspace to the U.S. military, Spain, Italy, France, Switzerland, Poland refuse to provide missile batteries to the U.S. and the EU. Something incredible is happening. Europeans are making their own decisions and sidelining a U.S. president for the first time in decades.
Yeah, and I'm happy to see it because I hope Trump pulls out of NATO period. I don't want World War III. I don't want World War III with Russia. The EU is trying to wait Trump out and continue that war going, even on a minimal level, because they're hoping the next president will turn that thing into World War III. Russia represents $74 trillion worth of natural resource assets for the EU. That would be the bailout they're looking for to go for the next 50 or 100 years. If they don't get that, I believe Canada is their other bailout, meaning they want to unite with Canada. We made a video on this, and then they will have access to those natural resources, especially with what Carney announced today, and potentially a tokenization of Canada's resources.
And we will see whatever the Trump address is tonight, and maybe talk about it a little bit tomorrow if it is relevant enough. But we do see someone from independent media speaking about the insanity in Canada. That is Glenn Beck, who we have also profiled regarding Alberta independence. But he says, quote, "I think Canada has turned into one big Monty Python skit between trying to make government-assisted ending look beautiful and the sheer amount of woke infighting at the NDP convention. It is the only explanation that makes sense."
And this is something a little older he's talking about, but even though it is a newer clip, he is one of the best American content creators that talks about Canada as in general and what's going on in Canada and all the mishaps, but as well as Alberta independence. He did have Keith Wilson on the show.
And a while ago, too.
I want to take you to Canada, and I want to show you how, you remember who made the SS officer uniforms, right? Who made them? Hugo Boss. Those were designed and made by Hugo Boss. Go into the store. I just go into the stores and ask them, hey, do you have any of those snappy numbers from World War II? They love that joke. But they made them for the Nazis and designed them to make them look beautiful and not scary. Now we look at them in their horror shows, right? But it came from fashion, the fashion world. Let me give you an advertising campaign from a fashion retailer up in Canada, Le Maison Simmons. Here it is. This is their ad from 2022 advertising campaign.
And pause it. And we profiled this ad when it came out in 2022. I remember this specifically. We made a full video on it, but I'm glad he's aware of it now and how they're trying to pitch made through fashion.
Yeah, it's been making the rounds after Noelia Castillo Ramos in Spain got ended.
Breasts are sacred. When I imagine my final days, I see bubbles. I see the ocean. I see music. Even now, as I seek help to end my life, there is still so much beauty. You just have to be brave enough to see it.
Just have to be brave enough to see the beauty of death. Doctor-assisted death. Okay? That is a fashion ad.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And anytime I get a chance to bring Glenn back up, I do. He's going to be a very important figure as Alberta independence goes forward. I'm absolutely sure of it. He's made it very clear he is a supporter of Alberta independence, and he doesn't like what's going on in Canada on a national scale.
And he has also been using and continues to use the opportunity to use Canada as an example of where you don't want to go within the U.S.
Well, and why? And a lot of people from Alberta may be saying, well, we don't need American content creators. Yes, you do. If censorship comes in and Carney gets this majority government, we're going to need everybody on a national scale in Canada, international level, and especially in America, because those are some of the biggest channels.
Peter St. Ong says, is shadow banking the new 2008? Defaults are spreading, the funds are locking in the $1.8 trillion private credit industry, where asset managers lead directly to companies.
Cracks are spreading in the $1.8 trillion private credit industry, like 2008, but this time gutting the load-bearing walls. On Tuesday, the Financial Times reported Ares Management, which runs $623 billion, limited redemptions in one of their flagship funds. That's the asset management equivalent of a bank run, so investors cannot pull their money because it would spark a fire sale that could collapse the entire fund. For scale, $623 billion would make Ares the 9th largest bank in America, just ahead of Capital One. Ares joins a rogues gallery of funds that have locked redemptions, starting with Blue Owl last month.
Okay, you can leave it there because it's a long story, but I'm going to explain a little bit of it because I was researching just before the show about that. I don't think there's going to be a financial collapse because of it. I think they're going to do the hokey doke and bring people's pension funds into it, meaning they're trying to expand regulations in the United States and Canada to kind of bail out these bad investments that a lot of these banks have made. Meaning they're going to allow pension funds to invest in more risky assets because they want to pull their money out of those assets.
Because in Canada, already a lot of the Canadian pension fund is put into investments that are not doing as well as the regular market does because they're under management.
Yeah, the thing is they're going to allow a lot of these pension funds probably to take high risk investments, which is not a good thing. Yeah. You're gambling with people's retirements that they work their entire lives for.
Already gambling. Do you want me to go to the last two?
Let's leave it there. Read any comments. I want to log out before the fringe does start.
Charlie Default says this NDP member is a lunatic. Again, I will try to bring that story for tomorrow if I can work it out. Troglodyte says we let the inmates run the asylum. Well, first you let all the inmates out because let's remember that the asylums were closed and then the people were just left off to fend for their own, and maybe some of them ended up being politicians. Silver Feet says, I am a 1BC member. Dallas is amazing. In BC.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad somebody's kind of emerged there, although I say it's a hopeless situation. And that's why I do support her. But Alberta independence is the only real way for real change.
Edward says, Polyev, he is for sale or lease.
Yeah, and when that majority government comes in on the 12th of next month, I really think you're going to see Polyev for sale or for lease. I don't expect him. He won't last another 3 years.
Like his office. DeBilver, hello, says, good day, everyone. Good day, but we're almost out. Again, you can watch it on replay, and you can go to whatever section you want with the chapter markers. That was it.
Oh, that was it. Fantastic. So it's perfect timing. We're going to head over to RUMBLE. I think we have 5 stories that are too hot for YouTube. If you're going to join us over there, it's the same name, Nat and the Guy on Rumble.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Guy, we'll see you over there. There's about a 30-second break while we get over there, and we'll see you.
And if you haven't subscribed, please just do so. It's the biggest thing you can help the channel and to help Alberta independence for us anyway.
Yes, you can do to help the channel. I was going to say something else quickly. Okay, now I forgot. We'll see you over there. Oh, now our show always starts. It's Monday through Friday and starts at 5 p.m. because I have noticed some people coming in and saying, oh, I'm here late. It's because we start now at 5.
Oh, yeah. Monday through Friday starts at 5, ends at 7. So if people want to go into the unacceptable fringe, it's another good show for Alberta independence, or they can join us on Rumble every day.
Edward says, if anyone is interested in the most Albertan bear in the world, the boss, there are lots of videos on YouTube. The boss was once hit by a train and he was okay.
And they keep bringing him up at the end of every show.
It's always Edward. Troglodyte says, hey, thanks for another great show. Hope you start getting more traction. Thank you. So do we. But the subjects we pick are not the most popular with overlords.
The censors.
We'll see you on RUMBLE.
Let's get ready to rumble!
And we're back.
Okay.